appreciate the favorable comments about my agenda. Without the administrative staff, of course, we're doing all this stuff. Let me just say at the very beginning, Charlie Worley has taken on responsibilities that no one ever expected him to take on. And we're here today because Charlie was the emergency call over the weekend. I mean, that's how far deep he's gotten in this thing. And we need to free him up. So I'm gonna say that off.
He has nothing else to do.
That's right. Yeah, well, that part's true. Welcome and introductions. We all know each other. You know Mark?
Do they know me?
Yeah.
We've met before.
So, any other introductions? Everybody here? Michael Landry, treasurer. Okay, good. I think we did a little introduction for you, right? Okay. All right. Well, let me just walk things through. I don't have any specific literal agenda in my mind, other than just bring everybody up to date for the most part. We have to work on some of these things that we're doing. As you remember, in June, the county allocated basically full funding for this facility and said that it was to be dispersed by Pac Place. In July and then August, the city terminated the lease with Pac Place, or refused to renew the lease with Pac Place. We undertook to run things here in July and August based upon the county allocation. Then in late August, the county met and reversed its funding to say that the money would not come to Pac Place, but would come to instead the individual partners.
Did they ever give you any reason why they made that change?
No, I mean, we talked to people and we've had conversations about it, but none formal reason why. And you got the email from me 2 days later. The executive committee met in emergency session, and basically, we decided that we needed to terminate operations as of August 31st. And then, so we've basically gone from there, trying to make things work out, around all of that. One issue related to all that is that, we operated July and August based upon the allocation that now will not come to us. And we keep asking for assurances from the county that when that money is dispersed, it will be also allocated to Pac Place to compensate us for July and August, but otherwise we don't have cash to operate. We'll let Charlie talk about the details of it, but most of the energy in the last couple of weeks has gone into trying to work with the transition committee and manage the building going forward. And it's been a struggle, and Charlie has been in the middle of that struggle, trying to keep things going. And once again, I appreciate everything he's done. So that's kind of where we are. I'm going to turn it over to Charlie and let you talk about where we are with the transition team, transition committee, and the rest of it. All right.
Okay, I am the representative on the transition committee, and we've had 3 meetings, I think, since our last board meeting. August 18th basically was really nothing more than a meeting with Whitney Property Management Group to talk about what a property manager does, how they go about it, how they bring it to the table, and so forth. It was an informational meeting, not an interview at that point with any particular property manager group. And they were kind enough to come over and meet with us and walk through the things they do and how they go about doing it, which was, I think, extremely helpful to the committee and particularly to the 3 tenants. We met on August 25, and basically we started off with the discussion that Pac Place, because of the county funding decision, and after a review of our cash on hand and what we might expect to get, that we really had no ability financially to continue operations after August 31st. We went into a pretty thorough discussion about professional management of the building, the process, the time frame to get professional management, discussed management going forward while arranging for a property manager, discussed the employees of Pac Place, who everyone indicated wanted to stay wanted to keep those employees doing what they've been doing, the three key employees that have done the building systems and maintenance and custodial care and so forth. We ended up agreeing that Pac Place would continue paying those employees and managing in the interim. And I indicated we would like very much to have something in writing to confirm that because we're going out on a limb financially. And there was an understanding that I would prepare such an agreement. I ended up doing so and sending it out. We last met Monday. Yeah, Monday was the 8th. And Paul was there representing the city and also Janice Ashley. Took me just a second. But both of them came and gave some city input into the meeting. We started off with a discussion of moving forward with the creation of a tenants association and the things that would be involved in doing that and how long that might take. We talked about the draft management agreement that I had sent out shortly before the end of the month. The Art Museum indicated it was not ready to sign. It was their understanding that it was to be a payroll pass-through operation only, where we would simply make the payroll and pay our employees and really not have much of an additional role in it.
Charlie, can I ask why we're doing this when the building now belongs to the city? Shouldn't the city be doing all this?
Well, there's nothing in the city's leases, and the city does not want to take our, jump in and tell me if I'm wrong, but the city does not want to take over management. They're going to look to an entity to manage, ultimately a tenants association. But in the meantime, they want some entity managing that they can look to.
Didn't anybody at the city foresee that there was going to be a problem?
Well, however we got here, this is where we are.
It seems pretty incompetent.
So, but that is where we are. But we continue, well, I think, I was getting ready to say, Diana Wortham and Colburn were both basically okay with the agreement with some questions. So they would like some estimates of the cost of sort of a budget of the management going forward, and also information on the cost for July and August. We talked about the concern over the employees and maintaining the employees and keeping them in good stead, their benefits and so forth. I indicated that, at least from my standpoint, I didn't feel that Pac Place could operate simply as a pass-through organization. That if we're going to maintain the employees on their payroll, we have to be the ones responsible for them and supervise them and so forth. Paul talked about the city's needs, basically two main needs. The city wants a transition plan, and as I said just a second ago, wants a single entity to deal with in the interim until the long term, and that's number two that they need. The long term is a tenants association to handle the management.
Again, doesn't the city manage the buildings like the city hall building? Don't they manage?
Yeah, but that's
those
not
buildings?
leased out.
Huh?
That's not leased out. It's a different situation.
I just don't understand why we're doing that.
Well, those
Unless we're just
leases,
nice guys.
the leases obligate the tenants to do that.
So the lease obligates the tenants to do that. So again,
And
why
so
is
we're
the
doing
board
it, we're
doing
doing
that?
it because they've asked us to.
Yeah, I think do it as a community service.
Yeah.
That we all believe this is an important institution, and 10 organizations are important institutions.
Yeah, and my feeling is however we got here, whatever the background is, that led us to here, whether we like it or don't like it, we're here. And I think as Michael says, it's a community service that I personally feel we have an obligation to do to the best of our ability.
So are you,
Rather than walk away and leave it all in the
are you
lurch.
getting paid to do this? I mean, they would have to pay someone else. if-
Well, Ed just paid me, he thanked me a minute ago.
I mean, I know you're not. I'm just throwing the questions out because I think
Yeah.
it's important that it get discussed.
I'm not spending, all my days or anything like that. I just go in the meetings and Making a few phone calls.
Picking up the mail. Really? There was emergency contact. I mean, it just, I'm not happy about that part of it. And the sooner you quit doing it, the better, because it's not fair to you.
Yes.
Is there,
I think there's daylight at the end of that tunnel. In any event, we ended up agreeing, that Pac Place would continue managing and the Art Museum would provide feedback on the draft management agreement, and hopefully we'll get that soon and get something in place sooner rather than later. And I promised that we would provide estimates of the cost of management, as detailed as we can get without taking an estimate for the July and August and also a budget going forward. The discussed deadlines or goals, however you want to categorize it, was to have a tenants association in place no later than, as soon as possible, first of all, but no later than November 1. There is an absolute deadline of January 1. There's got to be something in place by then, because that's the point, that's the deadline the county has given to transfer the utility billing over to another entity, which for all practical purposes just about has to be a tenants association. So there's an absolute deadline, and there's a goal that's in place 2 months earlier, and a desire to do it as soon as possible.
was there any discussion about compensation for July and August, and then the compensation structure for September?
The draft agreement that I put together calls for compensation for the management costs for July and August, less whatever we might receive from the county for those purposes. And also compensation at our cost going forward. Again, that's not in place yet, and we just need to get that wrapped up and get a draft that's satisfactory to everybody and move forward with it.
Michael, are you defining compensation as a payment for management services over and above the direct cost of the employees and the pass-through, or are you just talking about that everything's covered? Because Charlie was talking about costs, so.
Well, I don't think we've ever actually intended, or we certainly don't intend now to make a profit if that's the term
Well,
is off of the.
Yeah, that's fine, I'm not advocating
Yeah.
profit or no profit, I'm just trying to make sure I understand what we mean by compensation.
So I'll kind of jump into the financial report, and then I'll answer your question and ask another question. But right now, Pac Place has a little over $25,000 in the bank. We have that much or more in bills. So Pac Place doesn't have any money to have people that are employed by Pac Place without getting any funds from anyone else. So if we don't have money coming in yesterday from the tenant organizations to cover expenses from July and August and now September, and God forbid maybe in October, we're running this on a shoestring. We're running this because we're trying to do a community service. And I'm kind of tired of doing this. I'd be delighted to resign and move on and be done. But I don't want to be the finance officer, the treasurer, and have employees and having tax bills due when we don't have any cash in the bank.
Michael, what are we doing about unemployment insurance? I mean, it's surely the people that we've let go are going to apply for unemployment insurance.
Yeah, we have that, and we have compensation, the earned vacation pay and so forth, so that's on our to-do list, is to get to the bottom of that and pay it.
But there's always more than just what the insurance.
There are more bills than there's cash in the bank, yes. And we don't know all of them, and we're doing this out of the kindness to the community, trying to make sure all this survives before other organizations can step in and make it happen. And I'm kind of tired of that. I wish other organizations had stepped in August 1st to make it happen, or if not August 1st, then August 20th to make it happen, if not August 20th, September 1st. And it kind of infuriates me that there's that people are pushing back on contracts, I'm ready to just say, I'm done, and fire all employees, and that's done, and good luck to that organization, pick up the pieces and make it happen. This is kind of crazy.
I have a question though. You had, as we've been discussing the finances of Pat Place, you had said that we've always been working a quarter in arrears. That we pay the bills accumulate, then we get the money from the county, and then the bills are paid. Am I not understanding that correctly? Because I thought that we were still in that cycle. We are expecting money from the county
That
on the
goes to
1st
the
of
tenants.
October or
That
whatever.
goes to the tenants, not Pack Place.
We are expecting some funds from the
Well,
county directly, but I think it's in the range of 8,000, as I recall.
$8,000.
Right, so what you're asking is there an agreement that the tenants are going to pay those bills in arrears, basically?
I'm actually saying something different. The whole process of working in arrears, we were able to muddle through. We're beyond muddling through. We have a cash crisis, and we need cash from the organizations that are receiving services from us now.
So,
May I ask something, just not in any way representing the county, but let me just ask this. The money that we have at the community foundation, what if we took that money, we paid everything up to date, we transfer the utilities to whoever's going to be the tenant manager, and we disband?
Those are restricted funds of the community foundation. We
Well,
can't
for
take
sure.
them. Yeah.
Well, you know, it was
I
a
mean,
great,
that-
I know it was a great idea.
Yeah.
Actually, Michael's been talking about that.
I think there's an aspect of that we could probably, I think
Can
the
we
community,
pursue that in any way?
I think the community foundation would be willing to work with us if that's what it comes to.
I'd be willing to go and.
But I'm-
I think that's inappropriate to take money from the community foundation to spend on operating expenses that should be paid for by either the tenants or the city, period.
May I say something else on that line? I don't think there's been any question in any meeting I've been to, that I think I've said at every meeting, the county is going to give the money to. If they sent, if the partners sign a lease with the city, then the county money, and this Carol talking, this is the county talking. The county is going to direct their money to the partners. I think we've said that every meeting.
and,
So I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody. And I think if I'm John Q. Citizen sitting out on Lower Brush Creek Road, which I am, and I would like for this all to be over, and I knew the people at the Community Foundation were good people who look out for people all over Asheville and Buncombe County, and they wanted this to be put to an end and for us to walk away with our head held high. I really think if we went and talked to them, some of the funding could clear out all the debt that we have, could get what Charlie's worked so hard on, and God bless him. But get a tenant organization in place, let the tenants go on, or partners, go on with their plans, turn this over to them, and let's walk
Do
away
you
with our
really
head.
think that Roger McGuire would want the money that he put there for us to be spent
They
to
can't
destroy
do
us?
it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've met with the community foundation. I don't think we could touch it for operating expenses.
You can't do anything anyway until November because the board doesn't meet.
Well, what's gonna happen to this money at the community foundation?
How is it restricted? I'm just,
Has to be used on capital expenditures, basically,
Yeah.
capital affairs.
And there's probably a way it could still continue to be used. We're exploring that. Not sure exactly who would handle it, whether we might have to stay in place just in some fashion, probably in a completely restructured fashion, but to handle that, that's not a priority in terms of everything else that's on the table right now. Yeah.
Michael, I'd just like to, the payroll that was made September 15th was for the staff time through August 31st. So there actually hasn't been a payroll
Since then.
Yeah.
post
Yeah.
Pack Place's deadline. Though we haven't put it in writing in every meeting I've been at, most of which Charlie has been at, but a couple of others. In in the tenant's desire to keep the employees employed without gap, particularly medical insurance and issues that would be problematic, is the reason we've asked Pat Place to hold on to them until we can transition them smoothly once into a new situation. It is the expectation, and Vicky's not here and neither is John, but it is certainly my understanding that both in terms of those salary expenses and a couple of specific expenses that have been discussed, that the tenants are prepared to pay for them and to front the money until such time as the county money comes. What we've been asking for is, what are the outstanding contracts? What are the outstanding bills? What do you anticipate each next 2 weeks that Pac Place is holding on to it until we get, what is that? That's what we've been asking for, but I don't want you to feel like the tenants haven't said that they are prepared to do that, whether it's pay bills directly or whether it's pay Pac Place. That's been part of each of the conversations about maintaining the staff with benefits, et cetera. And, it was also a conversation about the compressor that this board approved, and there wasn't cash to pay for the compressor, and there wasn't cash to pay for toilet paper, and each of the tenants says, we'll pay for it. So I don't want you to feel like you're moving forward in a situation where there isn't that agreement. But I think we have been asking for information on outstanding contracts, on what bills are coming up in each 2-week or month pay period, so we have a sense of what that is, which we don't currently have. So as soon as we get that information, I don't think there's any...
Yeah, and we are trying to get that information. It's not the easiest thing in the world to get right now with the lack of all the support staff we've had in the past.
Well, and I think I certainly have offered our bookkeeper to help.
That's not the kind of help we would need to get that stuff together. That's the problem. And, I think we've got that part covered anyway.
Just for our history's sake, Carol, in regard to your comments, you've told us time and time again, be prepared for a change from the county, but we didn't hear that it was going to go to, that the July and August payments were going to the partners rather than to us, until that meeting. Michael and I met with Wanda a couple days before the meeting and to find out what we could expect. And, she wasn't real sure then, but she said, one thing I know for sure, the money is not going to the partners. She was very clear about that. And, it's exactly
I
what
think there
that
was
was.
some change that.
Yeah, but we had been told something different, and that's why we're in a bind now, is that we had relied on that kind of money for July and August, and now, we're faced with the situation we have this
Well, as Mark would tell you, the afternoon of a board meeting, as you walk in the boardroom, there could be some changes.
Right.
You're talking about commissioners?
No, I'm talking about in general, a board meeting. As you walk down the hall to go to a meeting, there could be some changes.
Right.
And let me just, clarification, I watched the county commission meeting on TV, and I think you were there because you spoke. And it seems to me that the commissioners in their dialogue in open session actually said that the July and August money would go to Pac Place operation, Pac Place Inc. operations would go to Pac Place, and that they would directly make Pac Place whole for July and August was the flow I thought I heard.
But it was $3,900 a month, something like that, that they allocated for what's called management expenses, management services or something, and that money is to come directly.
It's almost, that's the 8,000 figure that I mentioned. It's not
Okay,
quite
sorry.
8,000, but it's very close to it.
Okay, that's what I heard. That's what I heard. I thought I heard somebody say, well, no, now that's going to the partners, but that is coming out. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
So that's $8,000 that we, less of what we need to cover our costs for July and August, right?
Yeah, one other comment, Michael. We've talked about sort of the hanging wind down expenses, if you will. There's a set of costs of the wind down and unemployment and a couple things like that were mentioned. And then there are sort of the costs that are involved with providing services to the tenants, which is kind of the new paradigm. I think it would be helpful if we could sort of understand those two different buckets. I think that's kind of what Pam.
Yeah, and that's part of the information we've been requested, and we're trying to pull
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, and I think there's been some mixing of that in our discussion, but I see, and, you know, and my expectation was what Pam said, that the tenants really need to be good for the services provided, you know, the past few weeks.
Yeah.
Which, you know, and I don't hear any pushback on that.
There's agreement on that.
So the example would be, since we no longer have Heather, we need to hire someone, a bookkeeper, to help us figure all that stuff out. And that bookkeeper costs X dollars. Is that a cost that the tenants are gonna pick up to help us figure all this out in the transition, or is that something that Pac Place gets hung with?
Why should the county pay for it when it's the city's building and the tenant's building? I just don't understand. If I were on the county commission, I certainly could not bring myself to vote to give money to the city for something that the city should be paying for, or through the city, the tenant should be paying for. I don't understand.
They're not giving
I
it
know.
to the city.
It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, why should you, as a volunteer, spend the amount of hours that you're spending doing what you're doing when there are professional, paid people through the tenants and the city that can handle those responsibilities? Why are you doing it? Again, it's a rhetorical question.
I ask myself that very often, and I'm less willing to do it by each passing day. But I want to make sure, I mean, I think it's important for our community that these organizations are given up a good chance to survive through this transition.
But I think, Michael, that the organizations are prepared to step to the plate. You know, I think Mark put his finger on it. We don't have a sense of what the wind down costs may be. Each of the tenants has made it clear that they are willing to pay for the services that they are getting through the employees or toilet paper or whatever. But we don't have an order of magnitude on the other, or for that matter, what the direct costs are, and that's what we've been looking for.
Well, and I don't disagree that there's been indication from all the tenants that they're willing to pay. What we have disagreement on is the structure of how that all will take place.
And
That's what we're trying to-
the assurance that it's gonna be
Yeah.
dollar for dollar. I mean, we got no money put into it. So if we're not compensated for September dollar for dollar of what we spent, then there's a hole created there that Pac Place can't fill.
Well, and what the group is asking for, until such time as these accounts can be given to us in a list and transferred to a different account holder, is to know what we're paying for before we're paying for it. So
Well,
we-
we're gonna stop paying until we get some assurances that we're gonna be paid.
Well-
But we don't have the money. This is not money we can go out and raise, or we can carry from someplace
Well,
else.
we-
The money ain't there,
And-
Well,
and we can't spend
we
it.
sat at the
Pam-
table and had a discussion about having purchase orders and cutting checks directly for expenses or transferring them into account. I don't think there's any pushback on the tenants about which way to do that.
Yeah, and that discussion, I think, was a tenant discussion. That was not a transition committee discussion, so I wasn't even a part of it. You know, it's like I said a minute ago, there's no question that there's a willingness to pay. There is a real question about the structure. And in terms of what you're going to be paying for, I mean, yeah, we can give the information and give as detailed a breakdown as we can come up with, but it's the same thing we've been doing for how many years in terms of providing custodial, getting supplies, paying the contracts, the service contracts, paying the telephone bill, the security systems bill, and all of that. It's the same thing. It's not anything new. It's not anything different. Same expenses that we've always
Well,
had.
but it hasn't
Yeah.
been transparent in the past, and I think the tenants are asking for it to be transparent, and the tenants feel like there are some economies that can be made once we can look into the situation. Once we have information to look.
Do it.
Take it,
Take it all, take it all,
Take it.
every bit of it. We're
It's yours. Good
tired.
luck.
We don't want to do it anymore. You've asked us to do you a favor, we're trying to do you a favor, okay? But if you're gonna make it harder for us rather than easier for us, then we ain't gonna do it. I'm telling you now, we will walk
I don't know why you think that we're making it more difficult.
So if I could just interject a little bit and try to offer it. I'm brand new to this, brand new to the city in May.
But who were you on? You were
Assistant city manager.
Assistant city manager.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Robin Kern is the city attorney.
Right.
I'm sorry, I came late, I assumed y'all.
We did
I
introduce.
just couldn't hear you. What is your name, sir?
Paul Featherston.
Paul?
Paul Featherston.
Okay.
So I'm brand new to this. I've been working on it since early August, and I came to the tenant transition meeting on Monday. I have to tell you, the city's concern is, at least from my perspective, is that we do need to have a transition in place. That I did ask that there is, my perception from Monday is that there is disagreement between tenants about how to move forward in the temporary transition. And my concern is that some of the winding down that we're talking about takes resources, and that you can't answer these questions without having the resources to move forward, and that's where the logjam is. And that what I offered, and I offered this and I talked to Gary about it, is that I offered to the tenants at the table as well as Pack Place, is that since there doesn't seem to be an agreement and that we need this transition in place for the short term so that they can focus on the long term, that by a certain date, if there is not agreement between the parties, that the city would step in and say, okay, from this point forward, we are going to take over that interim transition and most likely contract it to a third party, which potentially likely could be Pack Place, and charge the tenants back for those fees. What I was told at the time was give us until Friday this week because there are two tenants willing to move forward with that agreement. Give them until Friday to come up with an agreement and then move from there, because we do have an interest in making sure that the building, there's on-call people, that there's, at least for the transition, it is not our function under the lease, I believe, for us to provide those services for common shared systems. It's our responsibility to do it for capital, but not ongoing maintenance. And we would play the landlord role, as rightfully so, that we would make sure that that ongoing maintenance happens on a regular basis. But for the interim, our priority is to make sure there's a transition in place so that we can interface with this building moving forward and not to do it on a day-to-day basis. So that was the last I had left it, is my understanding from that meeting, because we are trying to move forward. I am concerned, though, that there's a log jam that you can't unwind unless you have the resources to unwind.
Excuse me, sir. Why are you talking directly to Mark instead of the rest of the board?
I'm looking around the table at everybody. I'm trying to look around the table at everybody. So I'm brand new to this, so I have no agenda other than to try and provide the best services as possible for the city and the community.
Sure.
And Paul, just to clarify here, there are duties that the tenants have under the leases to do janitorial and maintain and so on. And that's largely what we're talking about here. You know, when we say management, we're really talking about services to be performed for the tenants on behalf of the tenants.
But he's talking with Mark.
And the discussion of what Pack Place might be doing over the next few weeks or months or long term is a contract to provide services to the tenants that the
Correct.
tenants are responsible for under the lease.
In lieu of a tenants association, yes, until a tenants association is created, yes, because we need an entity to interface with on a regular basis. We cannot interface with multiple tenants on common areas.
I think if you listen to this end of the table, these people we are not willing, this group is not willing to do what you're talking about. I really feel that way.
We're done.
I really think when you talking about Pack Place continuing in this role, I think if you look at these two gentlemen down here, to clarify exactly what he said, he ain't willing to do it. And these two men down here, this gentleman, former mayor, great man, he's right here with us, but he's fresher to it, and I'm just saying that. But, pretty much, we're kind kind of worn out with it. And so when you say you need a group to continue, I don't know that this is the group that's going to continue.
Yeah.
Let me,
I'm just saying, I mean, that's.
And that's clear today, that was not
Is that
clear on
pretty
Monday.
clear?
Yes.
let me try and put it in an appropriate perspective, and Michael, and Edward, correct me if I am wrong. My read is that we are willing to continue in the transition and wind it up and do the things for the benefit of the tenants to help get us there. But we're tired of fighting and arguing and having disagreements, and we want to get an agreement and move forward and then wind it up. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair
The
statement.
next 3 to 6 weeks, like be
Yeah.
done by the end of September,
Well,
early
and
October.
and certainly you got a November goal, but there is a strong goal on the part of the tenants to do this as soon as possible. The reality is it's not something that can take place in a week, or 2 weeks, or probably in 3 weeks. There's a lot of moving parts, including a lot of contracts with various suppliers, utilities, telephone, all of that has to be dealt with. If you transfer the employees over, you've got to arrange to somehow maintain their benefits or provide them with comparable benefits effective from day one. There's a lot of moving pieces that preclude it from happening in just a matter of a short number of weeks. It can be done over the next couple of months.
Charlie, let me, again, toward clarity here. The reason for Pac Place Inc. to continue to provide services beyond today is it purely to help make sure that folks are employed? Is there anything beyond that?
No, it's more than that. There's a lot of stuff involved.
I'm talking about not wind down matters, things that have happened. I'm talking
Well,
about.
that's a tenant service as well. I mean, we can
Okay.
walk out and call AT&T and say, stop the phones bill tomorrow, and tomorrow everybody's out of a phone.
I see, there's telephone, the telephone accounts.
The
and
same
then-
thing is true of the securities
Okay.
contracts and there's a lot of stuff like that, Mark.
Okay. Great, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just want to make it clear.
But that is, that is one reason, is keep some of our people employed, which we like seeing.
Well, and, I think you got to add to that that's a clear desire on the part of the tenants, is to transition those employees over to their employment. But that can't happen until there's an association or entity or organization in place to transition them to. It's pretty awkward to try and do that without some formality in place. So even that's going to take a little bit of time.
And there's been an agreement that there's a person who's going to draw up those legal papers that need to be done for a tenants association to be formed.
Have the direct lease has been signed?
No, one has. 2 remain outstanding.
Well, what bothers me is there's no representation from Colburn or the bidder. Is there?
Well, the thing is,
David is here.
Colburn has been absent for the past 3 meetings at
Since
least.
they decided they were moving out.
Right.
Yes, I'm into
They have been participating in
And I know-
the
I know-
transition meetings, Carol.
Yeah,
They've been-
and I know John Ellis has another function that he's been committed to for quite some time that he's at.
I'm not sure there were any action steps to take today, other than, getting affirmation, I suppose, that the executive committee should keep doing what it's been doing, stated in a positive way.
Well, if Paul has a Friday deadline, is transition meeting between now and Friday? Get everybody on board, or, I'm just trying to see what the next steps are.
The deadline
Well-
on Friday is for all comments on the agreement to be to Charlie.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood. I thought you wanted something in place by Friday.
Well, so what I said at the meeting was that I had said that based on what I was hearing, that there was no agreement between the parties and that we needed to have an agreement in place, and that if there wasn't an agreement, we were going to step in, create an entity or contract with an entity, whatever that entity would be, to manage the common shared services for the interim and build back the tenants. What I was asked, what was requested was give them until Friday and that they should figure it out.
So hopefully by Friday I'll have some idea comments are and how close we are to an agreement. And we'll know by the very first part of the week.
It's between the PAC and the three tenants.
Property owners association.
No, this is just an interim.
A management agreement. I can think, you know, take a look at the draft of it, which is a very simple, short management agreement.
To me, again, and I look at this very much from a financial standpoint. Pack Place operates the building in July and August. And the building costs run approximately $14,000 a month, give or take. The county's compensating us $3,900 a month for July and August. None of the tenants have agreed to pay us anything for July and August. We have, quote, employees of Pack Place that are cleaning the building and working on the building, and none of the tenants have agreed right now to pay us for those employees, and we don't have any money to even pay them. So we, as board members, in our fiduciary responsibility, are out there, and we're doing a community service to try to help this move forward. And I'm hoping the city's got our back. I don't know if the county's got our back. I don't know if they can transfer the July and August payments to Pack Place instead of to the member organizations, but we're trying to do the right thing for the community. We have nothing in this for the long term, and I'd love the transition to happen tomorrow and we wind everything down. But we do not have money, and we technically have obligations that we're agreeing to pay, and that terrifies me as the treasurer and the board member of Pack Place. And it's a position none of us should be comfortable being in, and I'm willing to do it a little bit longer.
I would correct one thing you said. Two of the tenants have actually verbally said they would pay us. Coburn and Diana Worthing. And just at this point, just waiting on getting an agreement.
We have a cash flow issue as well,
Yeah.
you know, because the check doesn't come until October. You know, so we can deal with that.
We just did payroll for the next one.
The next one's in the next week.
Yeah, end of next week.
Yeah, we'll be writing those checks on Thursday of next week. And we should, I think the county money is available. I've got a couple emails about that, and I think we'll have that $8,000, you know, soon.
That would be good. We were first thinking October was when we would have to wait to get it.
I don't think so. That's not, I think, the correspondence, email correspondence I have with them, they sound like, you know, we're ready to write you a check. Yeah. Rachel Nygaard.
Can I just make a suggestion? Since salaries are the majority of the costs for Pack Place, and those are already known, would it simplify things, particularly for this issue about the payroll, which is going to come up next week, for the partners to be informed of exactly what the payroll part of their commitment is for the next whatever it is, and quickly sign off on that? So
I disagree with that. I think you're either all in or you're not in.
What-
If you're talking about art museum only reimbursing payroll but not other expenses until you see documentation or whatever, I just don't think that's the right process.
well, it
I'm
might not
sorry.
be the right process, but the most important thing is that we do right by the employees.
Well, I think there's other expenses that are easily known and are just as obligatory, the phone bill, the service contract bills, any of the other utilities, the purchase of supplies, you know, all of those things are,
But they're not as easily, like the phone bill fluctuates, right?
I'll have to defer to Michael on that. I don't think it fluctuates very much, does it?
I'm sure it fluctuates a bit, but yeah, I don't think it's a huge.
Because
certainly
I
see
see
an average.
I see the bind that you're in, but the check from the county, this is what's confusing to me. Since we've always been running in arrears, a quarter in arrears.
So the reason that we don't have cash right now is because we had a deficit at the end of June. And because of all the turmoil and what was going on, we said, we're not going to charge the partners for the deficit for last year. So the partners didn't get charged, $30,000, $40,000 for last year.
Right.
And we're trying to do the right thing by the community. And now we're in a hole.
Okay,
Maybe we ought to
if
charge
the
the
money was
deficit.
going to come, if the money was going to come to Pack Place, it still wouldn't come until October. So what would you be doing, if the money was coming from the county to you directly, what would you be doing that's different?
Well, I think if that money had been coming, I think we would have charged the partners for the deficit at the end of June, knowing that we'd have to wait till October.
So you have payables and you have receivables. Right now, we don't have any receivables coming in, we're like at zero. You still have payables. If we knew money was coming in October, we would stretch our payables for 30 days or 45 days, and then we'd pay them, and we'd be clean, and everything would be good. I mean, it's cash flow management, business cash flow management.
But, and I
So-
think in the meetings that I've been in, there's no objection to paying the bills, but we haven't been given the bills to pay.
So,
Well,
Pack Place relied on Heather to create the bills and create that information. If you don't have that, we're gonna need to go hire someone and pay them to recreate some of that and create this. So it might be a little while, and I don't know.
I mean, if you
I'll-
need a float, that's okay too. I mean, I just think you need to ask for what you need and let us help move through it as efficiently as possible. I mean, we all have staffs here who are competent professionals, and if you need us, I mean, I told Charlie this the other day, I mean, it doesn't need to be on call 24/7. You know, there are several
It's
people
only a
who are
week.
willing to, to take that responsibility, but, and likewise,
We will ask everyone for an advance, subject to the billings, later on today or tomorrow.
that'd be fine.
Okay.
All right. Any loose ends? All bases?
we're touching them all, I think.
Okay. Well, the other thing that I had on, anything else to say about finances? The other thing I had on my list was that there's been conversation about restructuring the board. Some people want to get to that sooner rather than later. And so I proposed that we take time today and talk to them about that, see what direction the board would like to go in terms of restructuring it. Basically, as you know, we have 15 members on the board right now. There are the 2 government appointees, there are the, there are 4 partner appointees, and the balance are at large. 15 members, this was the design from forever on back to make sure everybody had a seat at the table, but we don't need to do it that way anymore, at least in my opinion. And we could operate with a much more efficient board, we're at 5 or 7 members than the present 15. If we made changes, we're talking about making changes in the bylaws.
Articles of incorporation.
Articles of incorporation. We need probably, just for the record, to go back and rework the plan of agreement. But that's that's the process we're talking about starting, is the kind of votes that go to that fundamental organizational structure of the board. But I thought we'd take a minute today and talk to some about that and see what people's feelings were. We may have people that don't want to change the thing, So I'm going to throw it open for discussion.
I'll start it off. I think we need to be restructured and slimmed down in size. If you look, we don't even know how much longer we will be in existence. We will obviously cease any kind of management, care, responsibility for the building once a tenant association is formed and all that's turned over to the tenants. So then the only thing out there is whatever it takes to wind down and whatever responsibilities we might have, if we have ongoing responsibilities with respect to the funds in the community foundation. So the overall purpose for Pack Place is changing considerably. I start off once we're out of anything to do with the operation of this building, there's really no need for probably tenant or partner representation on the board, or city or county representation on the board. We won't be receiving funds from either of the 2 governments. And that would leave 8 members not affiliated with the tenants or the governments, and I'm not even sure we need 8. 5 or 7 would be an ideal size for whatever we have to do, for whatever probably very infrequent meetings we would have to have.
I'm not even sure that you would, if in the end, after the transition is really finished with all we have to contend with is the community foundation funds. And I'm not sure, but that those who could manage that ought to perhaps be at-large people, positions, as opposed to bringing the government's
Yeah.
positions in or.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, I don't think we need.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, those, there's no need for those, yeah.
Yeah.
I
We're on the same
have
page.
a question about that. Just that, since there will be 2 partners continuing to occupy the building, and since the endowments are specified for capital repairs to the building, wouldn't it make sense for there to be some representation from the partners on the group that decides how to spend the money for the capital repairs for the building?
If in fact we retain a role in that, and I'm still not even sure that's necessary. Yeah, I think one of the problems is that this board has been too large and a little unwieldy and not able to move very quickly. In the past, we certainly don't need to, yeah, there's been reasons for that.
Are the tenants still partners? They're no longer partners, they're just tenants, right?
If you look under the terms of our organization, they are still partners. They're still entitled to seats on the board. They're members under the Articles of Incorporation. And the reason for that was proper and needed and so forth at the time this was created and up through the years of operation until now.
I mean, shouldn't the stakeholders be the board, which would be 4 representatives one from each partner and the city and the county, get rid of the at-large?
That'd be another.
That'd be
I think that, in my mind, that would be a separate kind of board. When they do their tenants association kind of process, and they have their own.
Because I don't see how you can
But then when you
cut
have.
those people out of the board because they are stakeholders. I mean,
Not really. Not really. There's no connection between Pack Place and the operation of the building once all this transition gets completed.
Well, except for the endowment.
Yeah.
But there is a connection between the endowment and its own.
And the
board.
building.
And its own board.
And don't forget, there's the lawsuit as well. I mean, that's an issue that's going to have to be resolved by this board. And I'm not sure, it may be one of those things that waits until perhaps government isn't represented on the board, you know. So, but anyway, that's a consideration. I mean, those are the 2 main things that we have to deal with going forward after we finish up here. You know, there's the endowment and the lawsuit.
so what would this new board do? I mean, just manage the money that's in the community foundation?
Basically.
That's what I just said.
Okay, and that money is designated for capital improvements, which would be for the building.
And I think to state it more to the point, as I understand it, once all our other responsibilities go away and we're not doing active fundraising, then we no longer can operate
As a 501c3.
as a 501 with the foundation. And so the
Well,
endowment
even as a
fund.
501c3. We have to be fundraising.
Okay.
And I think we can stay in as an organization for 3 years. And if we're not fundraising, then we have to go out of business.
So that's actually more the role of the board going forward with regard to the endowment. It's not so much spending the money, although we may do that for a while, but also planning for the ultimate surrender of the endowment. And once again, that doesn't require a 15-member board.
Sure.
You know.
Isn't it amazing when you get what you wish for and what kind of a mess we're in? I am absolutely amazed. I mean, that we're gonna have an endowment that's to be used for Pack Place, and Pack Place will no longer exist. I didn't get emotional about things, but I put in the parking lot at I saw the name Pack Place there, and I thought, will that name have to come off? Will it still be called Pack Place? Anybody remember how all this happened and why it happened and what's the result of it? And all of a sudden we dissolved and now the partners are leasing directly with the city. Pack Place is going to have money that can be spent on capital, but now we're not a board that's welcome in the building. It really is amazing, and this is not the county talking, don't anybody say it is, it's Carroll talking. It's amazing when you get what you wish for. I'm really disappointed. So, that's not the county talking.
What would your ideal be, Carol, going forward?
I think when you get to the point that you say that the stakeholders no longer include the city and county government, then I think we've got a real problem. Because the city and county government has more to do with what's happened here and what's happened up and down this street and what Colburn, who is the representative here, goes out and does with young people, what is brought into the theater that happens here, what the art museum's done, what this building has meant to the cultural upbringing of the city of Asheville, the county of Colburn. And when we get to the point that we have a board and first thing we say is we do not need the city and county representation on it, then I'm sorry, but as someone who grew up here and I see what this city and county's been through and how proud we are of what's here now and what the centerpiece of that was this building. When I worked for the Asheville City Schools, we rented space on the 3rd floor down there because they couldn't fill this building. They couldn't fill this building. My office looked right down on that street, and as people say, you could see tumbleweeds go down that street. And then it kept, didn't we, Shirley? And then it kept on growing. We had to move out of there. And it just makes me real sad to hear that statement in this room. So I'm sorry. I can get emotional.
This is why I wanted to discuss it. It's just that
There's
people
a
want
lot of
to
heritage
say what they
been
think
lost.
before we get into them. We need to turn over the lawyers at some point and, tell them what to do, but we need to hash it out first.
We need to hash it out. It's a real sad day for me.
It might make sense to sort of get through the more immediate things with, operating aspects and the budget sorting out before moving to that. I mean, maybe 2 or 3 months.
But in my opinion, we never should get to the point that we're having to sort out budgets when we're talking about the importance that this Pack Place should be for the citizens. I know we are.
Edward, what do you think?
I know there are a lot of people on the board, a large number of people on the board who are ready to move on, and also who think that we need to make it more efficient now. And I'm sort of like Mark, I don't think we need to do it right now, but there are a lot of people who wanted to get to it right now, so that's why I put it on the agenda for today for conversation. If there was a clear consensus, everybody said, yeah, let's do that 5-member thing, just, whatever, then fine, we can move on and get some of that done. But there's clearly not a consensus. And so my preference is wait a little while. It's just one less thing for us to have to work on.
In all honesty, if you had not been involved in this board for a while, for a couple of years, except for Charlie, who's been on for just a few months, but came up to speed pretty fast, why would you want to get involved? I mean, why would you want to take on being a member of a board?
I think that's a less one.
I mean, so,
Certainly in hindsight, that's a good question for me
I
too.
mean, how would you recruit 5 or 7 people that were dumb enough to do that?
Well, when you look at it, the executive committee's doing all the work now anyway. When I first got involved, I was a member of the Colburn Mineral Museum Board, and then a member of this board, and then off for a few years, and then back.
Again, rhetorical, not intending to say anyone dumb.
Well, I don't think there's any rush to do it. I think it's a good topic for discussion because you gotta start talking about it at some point. And I think talking about it today raises an awareness and gives folks an opportunity to think about it.
Tina, you've been involved since the beginning, right? You've been on this board, on and off this board since the very first. And what do you think?
I think the handwriting's on the wall. I think that it's going to transition into what it's going to be, what we're talking about here today, and that that place will be solved. And, but I think that we can have a little bit of time to be able to work with the Community Foundation funds and set some standards for that, unless we just completely revamp that somehow, some way. But I see that as being done over here as opposed to the operation of the building, which is a whole new entity and a whole new process. Change happens. I hate to see change, but change happens, and times are changing, whether we like it or not. So I think the best thing to do is to move forward and make this as smooth as possible and as quickly as possible. You know, God knows we've been working at this for a long, long, long time, and it's time to just get it done. Well said.
Any other comments on this issue? Anyone have any new business? That'd help us. Well, on that note, then let's adjourn the meeting. We have another meeting coming up in a month. We'll try to keep you up to date as things move through. If people feel like they are not getting all the information they need day to day, please let me know, because I'll be happy to include you in further.
Running them off, you guys.
Yeah,
You're
right.
running them off.
And I know.
You're going to assign duties. Other duties, janitorial services. And a call schedule, right, Charlie?
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
A good call schedule.